Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Ship and Read. Today I'll be doing my January wrap-up. So I have not done a January wrap-up in literally longest time. I don't think I did one at all for this past year, and I kind of want to bring it back just because it's a good way for me to reflect on the books I read this past month, like you guys know as well. And so I decided to bring them back for 2021. It's kind of late. It's already like mid-February and I'm just filming this now, but life happened and yeah, I'm just getting around to filming it now. Hopefully it gets up really soon, but yeah, let's get right into this video. So just some basic facts. I did read 7 books in January, which honestly, compared to my like old records, is so minimal. I was reading like 30 books a month, and 7 books is just not great for me personally, but I feel like I just can't read as much anymore. Maybe, I don't know, my attention span has gotten low, especially the whole like pandemic situation. I just can't really focus. So yeah, 7 books, but it is what it is. But for the most part, the 7 books I read, I gave them all pretty good ratings. They range between 3 to 4 stars, which honestly is pretty decent for me. I gave 1 book 3 stars. I gave 4 books 3.5 stars. And then I gave 2 books 4 stars. So like I said, pretty decent month, 3 to 4 star rating overall, so not too bad. And the first book that I want to discuss is Beartown by Frederick Backman. This one I gave 4 stars. So Beartown is basically featuring a small town that literally lives and breathes ice hockey. And their junior ice hockey team is finally on their way to the semifinals, on their way to actually winning the finals for the first time in years. And for the first time in years, after a grand victory, they throw a party, of course, as one should. And at this party, an incident occurs, leaving a young girl completely traumatized and the entire Beartown in turmoil. So this book was incredibly well written. I heard a lot of amazing things going into it, and I fully expected it to be very emotional, very heartbreaking, and it was all of that. Plus the writing was just phenomenal. The one thing I would say that is that the book is a little bit hard to follow simply because it follows so many POVs, especially when some of the POVs were kind of unknown. You don't really know who they are from. But at the same time though, it was really helpful once you kind of get into the groove of the book, because it gave you so much insight on all the members of the community and how this incident changes everyone's and affected everyone. I also thought that the girl who was traumatized was so brave in coming forward, because she knew that once she did, her entire family, her loved ones would also be affected and have a lot of consequences as well within their community. And overall, I just think that this was a very, very powerful book. And there were a lot of hard topics that were discussed, such as victim blaming, rape, sexual assault, consent, and so much more. So definitely go into it knowing that, so you're aware of some of the trigger warnings for this book. But overall, a very, very solid read. And yeah, I can definitely see why so many people raved about this book. Then the next book that I want to discuss is Big Summer by Jennifer Weiner. This one I gave 3.5 stars. So I did end up discussing this book a little bit more in detail in one of my reading vlogs. I will link that somewhere above and in the description if you want to check that out. So this book basically follows Daphne, who is a relatively successful influencer, when one day her ex-best friend actually reaches out to her, and she is very shocked by this encounter, especially due to the fact that they had a major falling out sometime in college, and this ex-best friend, her name is Drew, ends up inviting her to be a bridesmaid to her wedding. And what follows is a series of events that leaves her questioning a lot of things, including her friendship with Drew, as well as a murder mystery. Overall, this was a very fun, entertaining read. The murder mystery definitely caught me off guard. I was not expecting it in the synopsis, but it's actually a very prominent role in this book. So I was very surprised, but at the same time, I actually really liked it. I thought it was very enjoyable. There was also this cute romance in here that I really liked as well. But end of the day though, there was nothing really special about this book. It was just fun, it was entertaining, it's kind of lighthearted except for the murder mystery part. But even then though, it was like one of those cozy murder mysteries where it's not like gritty or anything like that, if you know what I mean. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. It just wasn't like amazing, nothing like super intense about this book, but it was fun, entertaining, and if you want something that is kind of lighthearted in a way, definitely check out this book. Then this next book that I read is My Dark Vanessa, which I gave 4 stars. I also talked about this book a little bit more in one of my reading vlogs, so I'll link that somewhere above and down below in case you want to check that out for more of my thoughts. So this book follows 2 timelines. One is Vanessa when she is only 15 years old. She went to a boarding school and she ends up having a sexual relationship with one of her teacher who is almost 3 times her age. And then in the other timeline, it follows her 30-something-year-old self, where at this point in time, she is still on relatively good terms with that particular teacher, but they have now parted ways. And the reason why this whole thing is brought to light is because another sexual harassment allegation appears with that same teacher with another female student. So now she is forced to kind of rethink the past and wonder if maybe what she had thought about her relationship with that particular teacher might not be as rose-colored as she had previously imagined. This book was incredibly well written. It was very disturbing. It definitely had a lot of trigger warnings, a lot of very serious hard topics that were discussed as well. I guess January was just a month for me where I read a lot of intense-ish books, especially with Beartown and My Dark Vanessa. And some of the hard topics / trigger warnings that were discussed was rape, pedophilia, as well as victim blaming, and so much more. But even though this book was really hard to read, it was just really well written and really well done. There were just so many quotes in this book that made me really feel for Vanessa, because she was so young back then. She was 15 years old. She was literally a child. And there's one quote in particular which I don't remember exactly how it went, but it was literally how she was just like, was this even true love? Like this has to be true love for me, because if it wasn't, then what did it all mean? You know, something along that lines. And I felt like that quote just resonated with me, because I was like, dang, like she's 15 years old. She thought she had this like soulmate bond connection with her teacher, and she's lived her entire life thinking that was the case. And with this whole new sexual allegation coming forward right now, it just made her question so much. And I felt like her thought process and the way how she kind of like comes to realization with certain things was just done incredibly well. And I mean, it was a hard book to read, but it was just like one of those books that you just kind of have to read to understand what I'm talking about. But it was really well done. It's not a 5-star read for me, simply because I felt very disturbed while reading it. I mean, the teacher was creepy as fuck, okay? Let's just be real. He was just disgusting, and there's a lot of things that he said and did to her when she was only 15 years old that I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So it was more of like a personal emotional element that I didn't want to give this book 5 stars. But in terms of objectiveness and like how the book was written, I think it was done really well, and it should be a 5-star read. It just wasn't for me because of my disgust for that teacher. But yeah, really solid book, guys, if that's something that you would be interested in reading. Then this next book that I read is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This one I gave 3.5 stars. So this book follows Amora, who is next in line to be queen, but only if she can prove to her people that she has the ability to control the magic that has been passed down the royal bloodline. However, something happens during this test and her magic gets out of control. So now she is essentially on the run to try to prove to her people that she is worthy to be queen another way. And during this journey, she finds out that her kingdom might have some turmoil that she wasn't even aware of. What stood out to me for this book was just the character developments. I think they had amazing character developments and growth throughout this entire book. Amora especially started off to me as someone who's very selfish and very self-absorbed, but as the book continues, I was able to see just how much she was willing to do for her people and how much she cared for her people and her kingdom, that I started to really respect her as a character. But she definitely started off very, very spoiled for me, so I felt like the character growth from the beginning to the end of this book was very well done for her. Not only was she the only one to actually grow so much in this book, but also the side characters. For example, Ferric, he changed so much. He was just kind of a dandy in the beginning of the book, and I felt like he was just kind of one of those like very hesitant, very scared, very timid guy. But as the book continues though, he changes so much for the better, and I was like kind of rooting for him, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, I feel like the characters changed a lot in this book. For me, the only downside was actually the romance. I just felt like for this book they were better off as friends, like really, really good friends, rather than like in a romance and a relationship, because I don't know, I just felt like the romance kind of took away from the book and it felt very unnatural and kind of forced, to be honest. But if they had remained really good friends, I would have been like so down for that. But unfortunately, there's just not a lot of YA books out there that doesn't follow a relationship. At the end of the day, there's always going to be some sort of underlying romance, relationship, coupling that happens, and sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. And I feel like for this book they were better off as friends, like really, really good friends. Then this next book that I read is actually a graphic novel, and that is Wonder Woman Tempest by Laurie Halsey Anderson and illustrated by Layla Del Duca. I'm hoping I pronounced their names correctly. This one I gave 3 stars. So this book obviously follows the life of Wonder Woman and how she was growing up living in an isolated island with other Amazonians, until one day she sees an accident out on sea and she decides to swim out and try to save as many people as possible. But in doing so, the barrier that separates the island from the human world, goes back up, and now she ends up being trapped in this mortal world. So now she's trying to just figure out and navigate her life with humans. So I've always liked Wonder Woman, but I never really knew too much about her, like her past history. I always knew about Wonder Woman's adventures in the human world. So it was really interesting for me to see kind of like how she ended up in the mortal world to start off with in this book. So that was definitely something interesting to read about and find out for sure. And I just really liked her character. I really liked how she was learning to coexist with humans and how she was always willing to help out and lend them a hand, especially because of her abilities. I mean, she was an Amazonian. She was very strong. She was able to help out physically, and she's incredibly smart because she apparently can, you know, understand and read like so many different languages, especially even like the small dialects that I honestly was like not expecting her to understand. But the fact that she was able to do so and she's always willing to help out, I mean, no wonder people really liked her, you know what I mean? So yeah, this was just a fun read. Nothing like super intense about this book at all, but I enjoyed it and I enjoyed learning more about Wonder Woman. All right, moving on to the last 2 books that I read, and that's part of a series. This one probably has the most tea for this video just because of my thoughts. So I did end up reading Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare, as well as finishing up the series with Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. This series I ended up giving 3.5 stars. I'm not saying that the series was bad or anything. I still enjoyed it, but I felt like the hype was overhyped, to be honest, compared to like my thoughts and feelings for the series. So I'm not going to go too much into details about this book or the series because it's technically book 2 and book 3 of a trilogy, but of course it follows right after Lady Midnight and how Julian and Emma are still trying to figure out their parabatai bond, and of course demon slaying as well. So my thoughts, this series was incredibly long. I was expecting it. I mean, it's very typical of all Shadowhunter books to be a certain length now, so I wasn't disappointed by that. I was just disappointed with how much extra information was given in these books that really didn't need to be in there. I just felt like the books end up being a lot longer than it really needed to be. And the main issue with this book was I really didn't care much for Julian or Emma. And as the main 2 characters in a series, in a trilogy, it was hard to read a series when the 2 main characters are the 2 characters I didn't care much about. So I don't know, I just felt like everyone's like, oh my god, like Julian, Emma, their angst together, their relationship. I don't know, I was just like, cool, you know. I don't know, I just felt like there were just so many other characters in the Shadowhunter World series that I was way more invested in, and this entire trilogy I just couldn't care much for their issues, their obstacles, what they were facing. Like some of them, yes, obviously, like the whole family dynamic and like dealing with their siblings and all that stuff, like I care to some degree, but I just felt like the amount of time that I just felt like I wasn't invested as much for these 2 characters as I was for other Shadowhunter characters in other series. So to be honest, out of all the series so far in the Shadowhunter world, I think this is actually my least favorite. And that's really all I can say about this series. I just felt like it was incredibly long, unnecessarily long, and the 2 main characters just didn't really care much for them. So it definitely impacted my enjoyment overall because, like I said already, this whole series revolved around them. So I don't know, I'm very disappointed with how much I didn't really enjoy the books. I mean, I still gave the whole series 3.5 stars because I still like the adventures. I still like what they went through, like some of the craziness that they go through, which is typical of Shadowhunter, you know, crazy antics. And I also really enjoy some of the other characters popping in, like Magnus, Alec, Jace, like literally like everyone who shows up in previous series I was like super ecstatic for it. Like Jem Carstairs was there too. Like there were a lot of characters in other series that popped up that I was way more excited for than Julian and Emma. So I don't know, I felt like overall it took me a very, very long time to read this entire series. That's probably why I only read 7 books, because these 2 books took me like a good 2 weeks or so to read. So anyways, I guess that's my short tea on the series. That being said though, I'm still really excited for the other series. It's just not, this one just, I don't know. it just wasn't for me. So overall, that's all I have to say for this video. All I can say so far for February is that it is going so much better compared to January. I think I've read like maybe 10 books already and it's only mid-February. So I'm definitely back on the reading game. Maybe I'll actually start going back to my original record, which is like 20, 25, 30 books per month as opposed to my 7 books over here. But anyways, that's all to say for this video. As always, if you do like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you'd like to see more content of me, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. But that's all I have to say for this video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!